that support base that we have across the globe, and especially here in Ireland, that's huge. Just having that there at the end of a phone or an email to be able to chat to and ask your questions. I think that's the biggest and best part of Shopify, is the people side.
Welcome to the Milk Bottle Shopify e-commerce podcast, brought to you by Milk Bottle Labs, Ireland's top-rated Shopify experts. Milk Bottle Labs build, upgrade, migrate and market Shopify and Shopify Plus stores all over the world. Milk Bottle will migrate you onto Shopify with zero interruption, guaranteed, or optimize your Shopify store and maximize store sales. This podcast is kindly supported by our favourite Shopify app and the only app we install in every store. Rewind.io is the leading backup solution for your Shopify store. We'll talk more about Rewind later. Now over to your host, founder of Milk Bottle Labs, Keith Matthews.
Hey, welcome back to the Milk Bottle Shopify e-commerce podcast. Today I'm delighted to have Albert Quigley on the line. Albert is a senior launch engineer with the Shopify Plus team, and he's based in Ireland. Albert recently presented on the automations on the Shopify platform at our last Shopify Plus meetup in Dublin, and the reaction was so good, we decided to extend it to a podcast interview. So here goes. Albert Quigley, thank you very much for your time today. Welcome to the Milk Bottle Shopify e-commerce podcast. How are you?
I'm really good, Keith. Pleasure to be here. So thanks for having me.
The last time we met, you gave a wonderful presentation on the automation side of Shopify Plus. So what we'll do is we'll probably segue into that at some point. But first, Albert, I'm really interested in yourself. And what part of the country are you in?
I'm based down in Tip. So I live in Ballina. It's kind of the twin towns, Ballina, Killaloe. People are probably more familiar with Killaloe.
My understanding is as well, Albert, that Shopify have quite a few remote staff around Ireland. So they've got quite a few gurus on the West Coast, isn't that right?
Yeah, like most of the gurus would be based around, I think, Galway, Sligo, predominantly around the West Coast, yeah. And then the rest of us, like in the Plus kind of org, we're all over the country, but mostly kind of in Dublin.
You guys are managing clients all over the world or all over EMEA, Albert?
So in Plus, between like me and the launch engineering team and the merchant success managers, it would be in Europe, Middle East and Africa would be predominantly where we'd manage our merchants.
Very good. One of the things that fascinates me about Shopify is the variety of staff in terms of experience and depth of knowledge. And, you know, Shopify have a habit of hiring staff with a diverse range of skills. And when I look at your history, you've presented on radio stations, you've founded your own firms, you come from a kind of an entrepreneurial background. Just give us a background to your experience prior to joining Shopify.
Yeah, so I studied product design in college up in the National College of Art and Design in Dublin. That was a great grounding, you know, in just design thinking, process thinking. From there, I had a research internship with Media Lab Europe when it was up in the Digital Hub near the Guinness Storehouse. That was an amazing experience as well. I was working in the Story Networks group. We were working on a live cinema project. So there's a resident researcher there working on this live cinema thing where you're editing video live as a performance. So you're creating your own movie and your own narrative as you go, kind of interacting with the audience. From there, that really got me into VJing. So I was VJing in nightclubs in Dublin, like the Pod and Tripod, a few other places. So I'm mixing video live in kind of nightclub sessions alongside DJs and bands. I was also doing performance with DJ Cormac and Cormac's big band. We did a lot of festivals around Ireland and Europe. You know, we did Electric Picnic a few years. We played at Glastonbury, WOMAD Festival. So that was an amazing experience. You know, you're getting into all these festivals for free. You get to do all these performances, just hanging out with really cool people.
Albert, just on that, so I actually wasn't aware that was possible. So the same way a DJ would mix music live, there's also another industry that I didn't know existed where people actually you mix video live.
Yeah, mixed video. And kind of the two are kind of some DJs, like even DJ Cormac now, he does his own audio-visual performance where he's mixing the audio and the video together. But at the time, like VJing, it's mixing video live, real time. So you just have a whole bunch of clips, like a DJ has their tracks, and you're just interpreting the music that you're hearing, you're interpreting the crowd, the vibe, and you're just presenting it could be just like really abstract visuals, but my style was more creating like a narrative. It wasn't really the abstract kind of kaleidoscope style visuals. It's definitely more found footage, like scraped footage, stuff taken from movies and TV shows and animations, old cartoons, and editing that into kind of like a story and a narrative that kind of matches in with the music and the beat and the vibe of the night or the band and the music that they're performing.
For the venue goer, then they're no longer looking at a DJ just on the stage. They have a visual experience as well as the musical experience.
Exactly, yeah. And you try to evoke different things depending on the music. I would always try go for humor if I could. That was predominantly what I was aiming for, because I'd use a lot of old like footage from the 40s and the 50s, like archival footage, like old safety videos, things like that, old cartoons like Betty Boop, and just stuff taken from movies, like real cultural references as well.
Yeah, so it's cool stuff. It's enjoyable, isn't it?
Oh, it's great. It's a great buzz, and I really enjoyed it. It's I haven't done it now in a few years, but at the time, because I was living in Dublin then, so it's a lot more accessible. Tipperary, not so much of a scene down here for it. So
very good. So, Shopify is full of creativity. So now you're working on the Shopify Plus team, Albert, as a launch engineer. So explain to the merchants out there that are listening to the podcast, explain what a launch engineer does for a Shopify Plus client.
So a launch engineer, it's really a multidisciplinary role. We all, as you alluded at the start, we all come from different backgrounds. Everyone in Shopify has quite diverse backgrounds. And even within the launch engineering team, there's no cookie cutter kind of subset of skills. We all come from different backgrounds. We're all subject matter experts in different areas. Some people are very technical and they come from development backgrounds. Some people come from project management or account management backgrounds, which would be more my side. And what we do then as launch engineers is this is for kind of high value or high complexity merchants who are coming from other platforms. So if you're already on Shopify and you decide to just upgrade to Shopify Plus, you won't touch the launch engineering team. You'll go straight to the merchant success team. But for those net new kind of merchants who are coming from, say, Magento or Demandware, whoever, they're coming over to Shopify and they need someone to guide them as they move over to this new platform that they have no experience with. And especially as those merchants are higher complexity, they may have a bunch of stores that they have to roll up for, like, say, US, Europe, Australia. They have to integrate like an ERP system, CRM systems, email systems, warehouse. So they've got this whole ecosystem, a tech stack that we have to guide them on how to integrate. Now, we don't do it for them. We don't actually touch the store in any way or any of the integrations, but we advise them on best practice. We're essentially a consultant. The way I kind of like to describe it is, imagine you're coming to a new hotel. You're sick of the old hotel. The service has gone downhill, doesn't have good food anymore. You're coming to this brand new 5-star hotel and you're upgrading to the penthouse. We're there like a concierge. We're going to tell you what all the services are, how to get the best out of the experience at this new hotel, how to access the different services, and really just guide you through that process. And then when you're there, you're moved in, you're settled, that's when we hand you over to our merchant success team. And then they're there to help you kind of grow your business on the platform and help you to convert more business, get more traffic, and really work on that growth strategy.
I suppose the first thing that comes to mind when you describe what a launch engineer does, would most of your clients not have an agency engaged or an internal team already in-house to do that?
In some cases, they will, absolutely. And a lot of new business coming to Shopify is brought by our partners like yourselves, and it's really valuable. And in those cases, we're probably not as heavily involved as a launch engineer, but we're still there as the launch engineer to either advise the merchant on certain things or advise the partner on certain things. But predominantly, it's led by the partner if the partner is bringing in that merchant.
So for a big trusted brand who's on a competitor platform, you're making it much easier for them to migrate, even if the client has already engaged an agency or a team of consultants or has their own in-house e-commerce team. I suppose you're there to hold their hand if they need be. Would that be the best way to describe it?
Yeah, absolutely. That is the best way to describe it. We're there just as a person to lean on and to advise them when they need us, especially when a partner is involved. It's kind of a when you need us, we're here. If there was no partner involved, it's we're here. We're here to guide you.
Very good. Albert, in your experience, is that one of the major benefits of the Shopify platform? The fact that once it's sold to the customer, the support doesn't stop there. The support, I suppose, starts once the sale goes through, rather than purchasing a platform where you have to do everything yourself as the client.
Yeah, I think my belief is that Shopify Plus, one of the main benefits you get is the people. You get the product benefits. There's certain Shopify Plus exclusive apps, which we can get into in a second if we're talking about the automation piece. But it's definitely the people. You get your launch engineer if you're a new business coming to Shopify, and you have the merchant success team as well there. You also have 24/7 Plus priority support. Even if you're on Shopify Core, you have 24/7 support, but going to Plus, you have 24/7 priority support. You can get escalated support to our kind of technical teams. There's Plus specialist teams. So it's really the people component, to me, is the most valuable thing that any merchant could get out of moving to Shopify Plus.
The priority support is really important. I think one of the beauties about Shopify is the fact that you email them, call them, and chat to them. So as a Plus client, obviously, if you've got some, if you're a high volume merchant, you really need somebody at the end of the phone that you can talk to. So that makes absolute sense. A few weeks back, we had our first ever Shopify Plus meetup in Dublin. As I mentioned earlier, you presented along with some of your colleagues. And it was fascinating to watch some of the people in the crowd react to the automations that are built into Shopify Plus. The angle that Shopify is taking is a really, really interesting one. It's obviously trying to promote entrepreneurship, but for high volume merchants, it's also trying to take some of the laborious, repeated tasks that business owners are carrying out on a daily basis and give that time back to the client by developing a platform which is automated. So the presentation that you gave at the meetup was spoken about actually after by a good few people to us. So can you just start by giving us a summary of the types of automations and I suppose the reason why Shopify is targeting automations on the Plus platform?
Yeah, absolutely. The reason why we're targeting it is that it's the complexity piece. As businesses are coming to Shopify Plus, they're businesses that are scaling and they want to scale fast. And what a lot of people do as they're scaling is, you have these repetitive manual tasks, and those only grow as your complexity of your business grows. And what people tend to do is they throw people at that problem. But then people are high cost, it's not scalable, and people should really be hired in doing what they're good at doing, which is creative tasks, and not just pushing buttons and doing these manual repetitive tasks. And that's why Shopify Plus is really doubling down on the automation piece. So we've got a number of products that have launched. They're essentially apps that are Plus exclusive that you can get from the App Store, and you just plug them into your store and you can do a number of things. One example is the Launchpad app. So the Launchpad app is, you want to run a sale. Let's just say you want to start that sale at 2 a.m. in the morning, and you want to apply a 10% discount across a certain range of products. You want your theme to change out to a certain theme with a certain look for that sale. You want to maybe run a script, and I'll get into that in a second, at the checkout that does a specific task. And that's a lot of different things that you need to run simultaneously. So before, you'd literally have to go and do that all manually, all different things, change out your team, run the discount all separately. With Launchpad, you can set all that up, set your start date, hit your end date if you want to set an end date as well, and then just click enable. And then when 2 a.m. hits, all that's going to automatically change on your store. So your new theme is up, your sales started, your product's discounted, it's ready to go. And you can then track the performance of that. So that's one simple example of not having to stay up till 2 a.m. and not having to do all those manual simultaneous tasks yourself.
Let's take a short break and I'll share the one app we install on every Shopify build. The team at Rewind.io have developed the leading backup solution for Shopify. Did you know there is no way of recovering lost data from a Shopify store? Rewind.io automatically backs up your store data. In the event of a data loss, usually due to human error, Rewind enables you to rewind your store back to its previous state. It's so simple and is used by some of the world's leading Shopify agencies, such as Kurt Elster of EtherCycle and Kelly Vaughan at the Tap Room. If your store is gaining traction, you may have multiple users making changes. Often store owners allow theme or app developers enter a store to add code. Sometimes mistakes happen and data gets deleted. You can reduce your business risk today and prevent a costly catastrophe by installing the Rewind.io app on your Shopify store. Get your first month of Rewind for free by simply responding to any of the welcome messages or emails you receive after you begin your 7-day trial and mention this podcast. Now, back to the interview. So that's really important when it comes to Black Friday because you can spend the lead up to Black Friday actually planning the look and the feel, planning your promotions, and then just schedule it rather than having your team to press publish, at 11:59 the night before. When you talk about saving time, that's definitely saving time. Is that particular Launchpad app, is it proving popular amongst users?
Yeah, it's proven really popular, especially those merchants that love to do those big kind of flash sales and product drops. So where they'll have like a countdown timer on their store where it's building that kind of anticipation with their customer base. And they know that once that countdown timer hits 0, Launchpad is going to kick in. It's going to launch that new theme. It's going to launch that product sale or even publish the new product. It may not even be available on the store yet. It'll do all that for the merchant, and it could do it at whatever time of the day they want. Like one example is like Frankie's Bikinis. They've used it for those big kind of flash sales and product drops, and they love it. And it's a lot of our bigger merchants that need to run these types of sales are finding it really beneficial. And more and more merchants are picking up on just how useful it can be.
If you think about it, Albert, as well, if you've got Mother's Day, Father's Day, St. Patrick's Day, 4th of July, Black Friday, if you look at social media calendars that include the important dates for the year, you'd be very surprised how many dates you could potentially use Launchpad if you had access to it.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the power of it. Like it's the power of the automation. It's once you start playing around with it, you really see how much value you can deliver to your organization, how much just time you can get back in your day, and how much money you can save yourself.
Fair play. Albert, the one that we're really interested in, I suppose, from a Milk Bottle point of view, because we use it quite a lot with a few of our large customers, is Shopify Flow, which I suppose in a way it solves really, really simple problems, but it does save an amazing amount of time for customers. So can you give us an intro into Flow?
Yeah, so Flow is our app for creating those workflows for automated tasks. So what you're looking at is you need to identify what's the trigger. So your inventory is low. So once your inventory, say, hits 2, then you want to look at a condition. What do you want to happen? So you want to say, okay, if the inventory is low, we want to reorder inventory. So you want to send an email or a Slack message to your inventory management team and get them to order new stock from your supplier. Another example could be you want to identify like your high value customers. So once a customer has spent over $100, you could create a workflow that when an order is created or an order is paid and that customer has spent over €100, then tag that customer as a VIP. What you can do with that tag then is that you could use that in, say, your email campaigns, like with whatever email system you're using, like Klaviyo or Bronto. Use it in, like, say, your loyalty schemes, just to, I suppose, excite the customer and offer them maybe discounts because they're now like a loyal VIP customer. It's really a case of kind of identifying, but that's just like scratching the surface of what Shopify Flow can do. A really good example actually is if you were to tag customers based on what they've bought. So let's just say I go to a store and I buy some men's clothing. And let's just say the SKU number on that clothing has like an MEN to identify as men's clothing. You create a workflow that identifies, right, if there's a SKU with MEN in the SKU, tag this customer with men. Then you can do a theme modification on your storefront that when that customer comes back and they log in, you can look for that tag and you can then customize and personalize that experience for that customer and just show them men's clothing, not a mix of men's and women's or kids' clothing, just men's clothing. So just by creating that workflow to tag the customer based on what they've bought, you've allowed them to personalize the experience when they return back to your store. So again, allowing you to delight the customer and really target and personalize that experience for them.
So Albert, I actually didn't know that. So that is kind of like what Segmentify and Nosto do. They load a cookie on the customer's browser, and if let's say they're on a golf shop and they're browsing 9 irons, when they go back to that store, the store front actually, it will present the products that the customer has already browsed to the front. Are you saying that Shopify Plus already has that capability via tags?
It does, but it's limited because like the customer has to log in for that customer tag to be surfaced and recognized. Things like Nosto, because they're using a cookie, the customer doesn't have to be logged in. They're just using the same browser.
Well, that's fair enough. I mean, if you're a busy store and you've got some high value customers that are returning, I mean, it makes perfect sense that those customers would have an account anyway. So, I mean, that's great. The example that I'm really interested in is the fraud example, where Shopify can automatically track whether or not the customer has, an element of risk. Can you explain that example to us?
Yes, so that is creating a workflow for the risk level of an order. So where you can say, and this is where you kind of have different components to the workflow. So it starts off by saying, right, if the order risk level is high, don't capture the payment. So you don't want to capture that payment straight away. You want to go and have your team review that order, check out the customer, and then just decide, okay, are we going to capture this payment? And you can make a human decision on it. But say for all other orders then where they present a risk level of say medium or low, you could have your workflow set up to just say, just capture payment. So you can just go ahead and capture that payment straight away. But what this is really helping to do is, reduce the fraud and reduce chargebacks, which are a huge pain for a lot of companies, especially big companies who could be losing tens of thousands a month just on chargebacks. So what Shopify Flow can do in this case is identify the high risk ones, have the team review it, and then allow you not to capture the payments on those, so to avoid the chargebacks.
Yeah, and if you're a store that's processing, hundreds or thousands of orders per day, sometimes it's difficult. You have to really spend a lot of time to try and track that fraudulent those fraudulent orders. And of course, in the long run, it will save you money on actually purchasing an app which will scan those orders as well. So the bit that I find really interesting about Shopify Plus is that there's an attribute within Plus that will instantly save customers money and effectively pay for itself. And the more I talk to Shopify staff and the more we learn about Plus ourselves and the more we work with clients, we always kind of uncover another feature that would suit another client and then save them money in the long run. So I personally find it fascinating. Where Flow really comes into play and where it really has an advantage is through the connectors to other apps. Can you explain to the listeners how you can use Flow to then integrate with other apps? So, for example, integrate with Smile or integrate with Loyalty Line and then send out a separate email or a bonus to that client. Can you just explain the structure of the connectors?
Yeah. So connectors are just that expansion of like the Flow universe. So it's not just restricted to within the Shopify platform, and now it allows you to create workflows that work between different apps. So like you said, like Loyalty Line or even Klaviyo. So an example would be, let's just say a customer moved into a risk segment in Loyalty Line. Like they gave a low review or something like that, or they haven't purchased in a while. So you track that using Loyalty Line. Then you would send an event to Klaviyo, and then you'd send a win back campaign through Klaviyo. But this is all created through a workflow in Shopify Flow. Another example is if you're using stamp.io for your reviews, and if you got a review that was equal to or less than 2, you don't obviously want to be getting those type of reviews, so you want your team to be tracking that and maybe reaching out to the customer. So you could set a workflow that if a rating in stamp.io is equal to less than 2, you want to add that, say, row to a Google Sheet, or you want to create a new card in Trello, or whatever way you or your team like to track that information, so that you can then follow up on it, analyze it, look at the review, reply back, reach out to the customer. So a number of different actions that you can kind of cascade just off of that one workflow by tracking that information.
The flows are pretty easy to build, and the style of it is similar to how you would build a workflow in Klaviyo or Conversio. There's also some pre-built flows, which you mentioned at the Meetup, which are proving very, very popular. Can you give us a rundown on exactly what's actually pre-built and ready for the customer to take out of the box?
Well, yeah, we have the templates. So we have the workflow templates, which are, to be honest, they're a huge benefit now that we've had those, because initially when we just launched Flow, it was a start from scratch process. But now with the templates, there's ready-made ones, even for connectors. So you can just search for a particular type of workflow or outcome you want to achieve, and then you'll have the workflow. You can load that workflow up, and then you can just adjust that workflow as you need it. But at least you're not starting from ground zero. So those templates, we're adding to those all the time. And even with the connectors, more and more app developers are building out their connectors to work with Flow. So that ecosystem within Flow, in terms of the connectors and the templates, it's just becoming more and more comprehensive every day, because everyone's coming up with new needs, new requirements. And even as Shopify itself develops and adds new features, that means that you're going to get more workflows that can access those features then within Shopify Flow. So it's an ever expanding kind of universe, and it's just going to keep increasing more and more what our merchants are going to be able to automate.
So it's never ending. So I suppose the more a merchant becomes familiar with Shopify, it'll just become an endless list of opportunities to save time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's us as well. Like, what's really important for us is that we're getting that feedback from the merchants. They're telling us what they need. We're just not assuming what they need. We're getting that feedback from you, like you, Keith, and partners from the merchants directly, and we're taking that back to our product teams, and they're building all of that in. So that's really important for us. Like, we're at over 800,000 merchants now on the Shopify platform. That's a huge amount of knowledge and feedback to be getting. So it's just constantly increasing the benefits and the feature set of the platform. In general, the Shopify platform itself is built on that concept of like being a SaaS platform to just help people take the strain and take that burden out of like that getting started, like ramping up really quickly, creating your store. I mean, you can set up a store in a weekend. Even when I applied for the job in Shopify, part of that was build a store, and the deadline for me applying for the job in Shopify was the day after I saw the advert for the job. So I had a night to build a store, and I did it. And I'd never really touched Shopify before. So that just kind of shows how easy it is to just get started. And I think what I would say to people is just get started, play around with it. Don't be intimidated by it, because once you get into it, it is quite intuitive. But harking back to what I said about the people aspect of it, whether you're on Plus or whether you're on Core, having that support there. And like you said, you can email them, you can live chat, you can call them up. That support contact, that support base that we have across the globe, and especially here in Ireland, that's huge. Just having that there at the end of a phone or an email to be able to chat to and ask your questions. I think that's the biggest and best part of Shopify is the people side. The automation piece helps you save time and money, but the people will help you to grow your business and help you kind of take the pain out of like getting yourself started on Shopify and growing that business on Shopify.
Yeah, fully agreed. I suppose the two of us are Irishmen, and it's really nice to see that, a Canadian technology company is employing quite a few people, scattered all around Ireland. As a partner, when we go on to our own priority support chat, we're always fascinated by where the gurus are situated. And it's really nice to see that Canadian company is also supporting Irish jobs.
Oh, it is. It's great. I'm delighted anyway. I'm very happy that they're supporting jobs here.
Yeah, Albert, look, it's been really, really nice talking to you. The Shopify platform is developing rapidly. So how about we touch base maybe in maybe 5 or 6 months' time? And I'm sure there's a feature that you'll know much more than us on, and maybe we can discuss it.
Oh, absolutely. I'd be delighted to.
Perfect. Nice talking to you. Take care.
You too. Thanks a lot, Keith. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Milk Bottle Shopify e-commerce podcast. All of our episodes are available on Spotify and iTunes. We really appreciate the support of our sponsor, Rewind.io, the leading backup solution for your Shopify store. Get your first month of Rewind for free. Just respond to any of the welcome messages or emails after you begin your 7-day free trial and mention our podcast. Until the next time, take care.